that you guys are here. I believe this starts at 3:15, so we don't want to waste any of your time. We want to take advantage of the opportunity that we have to be here together. My name is Vanessa Hairston.
And I'm Jamil.
And we are your hosts for today. And we want you guys to be able to enjoy this at your leisure, at your comfort. So if you're in a space where you can turn your camera on and engage in that way, you're welcome to. If you want to stay just active in the chat with your camera off and mic off, that is fine with us as well. We just want to get started with a word of prayer, and then we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves. Our gracious Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to be in this space, even if it's not literally together in the same space. We're just so grateful for the opportunity that we have to connect. And I pray that you would be with us and that you would give us wisdom on how to manage and thrive really in interracial relationships. We're thankful for the opportunity that we have to have different cultures in this world and to learn so much from one another. Be with us now. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So as I said, my name is Vanessa, but my last name before marrying this hunk of a man was Hernandez. So my background is, I'm kind of a mix, which is interesting. It happens a lot. I was born in America, but my dad is Cuban. He was born in Cuba, and his family migrated over here, immigrated. Migrated is for like animals, but he immigrated with his family. And then my mom is Puerto Rican, and she was born in New York. And so they fell in love, got married, had me. So I am Cuba Rican. And growing up, I loved my culture. I love Spanish culture, but I just didn't feel super attracted to Hispanics. And I always knew, I told my mom at a really young age, Mom, like I am going to marry a Black man. I'm going to marry a Black man. And she was like, honey, you can marry whoever you want. Like, we'll support you no matter what. And so I told God, I gave him a list of what the things I wanted. And here we go. The most beautiful Black man in existence, married to me. Don't be jealous, okay? Don't be jealous. There'll be somebody out there for you. It's just not going to be as high of a standard as Jamil. Not just kidding. But yeah, so that was me. I always knew like, I was open to other things, but my heart was really set on like, I really want some chocolate in my marriage. Like I want to marry a Black man.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just Black. I honestly don't really, the reason I say just is because normally people are disappointed when I say that.
They think you're Dominican or
something.
I
get called everything except Black. But yeah, I don't really know a lot about the history of my family. So these conversations are always hard for me because all I know is I'm Black and we're from Los Angeles. That's pretty much it. But we moved to, my mom moved to El Paso, and that's where I was born. And my nanny at the time was Mexican. So my first words were actually in Spanish when I was a baby. And I kind of like imprinted on my nanny. Like I just felt like she was a safe place. So from then on, it was just clear that I was going to end up
with a Latina.
Like it was clear. And my family knew it. So no one was really upset.
Surprised. Like,
yeah, no one was
this was going to happen.
Upset or surprised or anything. Everyone just knew, like from being a baby, like I was just conditioned to end up marrying a Latin woman. It was just gonna happen. But yeah, it's kind of my background in our relationship.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you guys may have an affinity towards a specific kind of culture or race that you're really attracted to. And everyone's different, you know, so you may end up with a person like that. You may be dating someone like that, or maybe you're here for a different reason. So we kind of want to get to know you guys just a little bit. So you can either A, unmute yourself, or B, put in the chat if you're unable to unmute yourself. But we want to know why you guys are here. Are you guys in this interracial dating seminar because A, you're in an interracial relationship and you want to learn more about how to navigate them? B, do you know someone who's in an interracial relationship and you want to learn how to support them? Or C, you are not in a relationship, but you know, like, yeah, it's probably going to be interracial. And so you want to get some preparation tips. Go ahead and either put in the chat, unmute yourself. Which of those three? Is it you're in a relationship, somebody you know, or you want to be in an interracial relationship. Okay, so Paola is, you're not right now, but you want to be in an interracial relationship. So excellent, kind of like us before we got together, we kind of knew, all right, we're gonna, someone else. Okay, so smiley face, I love that. So similar, you're not in one now, but you know that you want to probably date outside of your own culture. Anyone else? We have two in agreement so far. We'll wait for a couple more seconds until people maybe are done writing. Okay. Well, for whatever reason you guys are here, we pray that this will be a blessing for you guys. We have 3 tips for you guys, 3 things that you can learn and prepare for, and they start with 3 B's. What are those?
Background, backlash, and bridges.
That's right. So it should be easy for you guys to remember. Background, backlash, and bridges. Okay, so what do those things have to do with interracial relationships? We'll start with our background. So what was your background? Obviously, you told a little bit of like your cultural background, but just like your experiences, differences in culture or something like that.
So I realized in my culture, we value cleanliness. Vanessa realized that really quickly.
I did.
In our relationship. And we're just like, we go overboard on being clean, whether that's being clean for yourself or making sure that your food is clean, washing your vegetables like 5 times before you cook, things like that. And like sayings, there are some things that to other cultures, it could sound rude, but in my culture, it's actually a compliment.
Yeah, it's part of the language. Exactly.
I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll say it. Well, okay, so I will talk in the cleanliness part. So not that my family is messy or anything like that, but my mom, you know, Hispanics in general, I find like they're not the most like uptight OCD unless they have like that kind of prerequisite already. It's kind of like a little dirt's not going to hurt you, like no big deal. And so that was my family. Like my mom is very clean, but like I realized, especially in the kitchen with Jamil's mom and his sister, like I needed to triple wash my vegetables or else someone was going to say something, you know, and I was just going to poison them. If there was a little bit of dirt, I needed to get a special wash for my vegetables that I'd never done before. So these are things I started learning from his background. And then for me, there was one time so one thing that our families all like to do, which is really fun, is that we like to cook together, bake, cook, whatever. His mom, his sister, and me, we throw down in the kitchen. So I made like, do you remember what is it, bread or something? Mac and cheese? I can't remember. I made something.
Yeah, it was something like that. I think it was like macaroni and cheese or something.
Yeah, I made something. I can't remember what it was. And I served it to everybody and they started eating it. And then they're like, And then Jamil's mom looks at me and she's like, you put your foot in this. And I was so offended. I was like, put my foot in this? Like, they don't like it? And I told Jamil afterwards, I was like, I'm sorry that your family didn't like my food. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, they said something about feet in the food and stuff. And he just started laughing. He had to explain what that is.
Yeah, she didn't know what that meant. But normally that's a compliment. Not normally, it actually is a compliment.
Yeah, it is a compliment.
Like you taste something and it's really good and you're like, oh my word, like, did you put your foot in this? But Vanessa's thinking like, man, like feet are nasty. So if I put my foot in food, wouldn't that make it nasty?
Nasty, exactly.
But really, like for our culture, it's like, man, like you worked so hard on this, like you must have put your foot in it as well. Again, it's kind of confusing.
It's a little bit confusing.
But it is a compliment. But she did not know that at the time. So originally she was kind of hurt, like, oh man, like I tried my best, but I'm sorry I was nasty. But like they weren't roasting her. Like they were actually complimenting her, like, this is great.
Yeah. And so there are things with your cultures, with the different backgrounds, you're going to have to learn about the other person. So like in the chat, if you want, just as we're talking, write down some sayings in your culture that like, okay, yeah, only like Salvadorians say this, or only Mexicans say this, or only like Koreans say this. Put some stuff in there from wherever you are. And maybe if we have time later, we'll read them out loud. But yeah, I had to learn like some of the nuances and the way that Jamil's family communicated. And sometimes it was new to me. A lot of times it was a fun experience, even if it was a little bit confusing at first. Obviously, being from a Hispanic background, there were several things in my background that Jamil had to grow accustomed to, and maybe it was a little bit easier for me, specifically because Jamil doesn't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's difficult.
Yeah. So, I mean, for her immediate family, it wasn't really difficult because they speak English. And I mean, they're ministers, so they kind of have to be able to communicate to different churches and stuff. But whenever I would like hang out with her family, like her cousins and her aunts and her uncles and stuff, and her grandparents, that would be hard because I'm really just there like, okay, like everyone's having this conversation and everyone's into the conversation. And I'm kind of here like, just trying not to look awkward. So that definitely,
I know.
that definitely was interesting. And like, I mean, even with like food, I really had to learn as well because for me, like growing up in my household, yeah, we were encouraged to eat our food, but we're also encouraged to like listen to our bodies. So if you just can't eat something, like don't throw up, like just say no, like I can't finish this. But something I had to learn after being in
especially
Vanessa's
at
family,
potlucks when they serve you.
Yeah, like potlucks and people's houses. Like if I am grabbing like small portions, like they're not gonna let that slide. They're gonna talk to me.
Especially as a male.
Yeah, especially because I'm a man. So it's one thing if I'm grabbing small portions and like I'm a female, but because I'm a male and they're like, is that all you're gonna eat? If I say yes, it's almost like, wow, that's all you're gonna eat because like your food's disgusting. Why did you even make this? When for me, that's really not it's really not what I'm trying to say. I just don't want to eat that much food.
I just don't want to eat 4 cups of rice. Like
I'm not gonna finish it. Yeah, like I don't want 4 cups of rice. I would prefer just one. I have to enter it into my fitness pal afterwards. So I'm just really not trying to add a bunch of food and stuff like that. But I had to learn, like, man, like that's kind of like seen as disrespect in a way.
Disrespectful, yeah.
As disrespect in a way. So there's sometimes when I just have to swallow it. Like this past weekend, weren't necessarily with her family, but again, like with
Hispanic cultures.
In a Hispanic culture.
Yep.
And they were serving rice. And she put 1 spoonful on my plate and I was like, thank you. And I was reaching for my plate and she was like, no, put 3 more. And then gave it to me.
And like, looked at me and I was like, I told you.
Like I was mad, but I didn't say anything because I was like, man, like, this could sound offensive. But again, that's just something I had to learn. Like, it's not them trying to be like, they're not trying to be disrespectful to me. But at the same time, I have to be aware of, man, like this is really important. If I don't eat their food, it's almost as if like I'm not valuing the hard work that they put into it. So, you learn these things as time goes on.
So it's important to kind of see where the other person is coming from, what their culture is like, really understand their background, and how this builds. I mean, you're going to learn their background and how they were raised and the schools, their church background. I mean, there's so many things that can add to this, but specifically their cultures. What are cultural norms for each of you? And when they come together, how can you best respect that culture? Even if it goes against maybe some things that you've learned, you love that person and their family enough to say, okay, I'm going to put aside some of my preferences, right? Like I don't want to eat 3 cups of rice, but I'm going to put that aside because I would rather eat 3 cups of rice than offend this person. And know like that it's totally normal for one person to assimilate easier into the other person's culture.
For sure.
So it may be more difficult for one of the other to kind of assimilate into that culture. So like for me, it was a lot easier to assimilate into Jamil's culture because I was like, I can learn these sayings. I can learn how to like respect I can learn how to respect elders. Like I can
cards.
Learn, right. I can learn how to wash my vegetables, whatever. But for Jamil, he's actually learning Spanish. Like he's doing Duolingo every day, but like learning a whole language.
That's a little harder.
It's a little bit more difficult.
Learn and put your foot in this,
Exactly. So know that it's totally normal for one person to assimilate easier into the culture. And then a lot of things too that for us that we're learning different backgrounds is like even just family structure. So like cultures have a very specific family structure. And maybe if they move to America, they kind of adopt a different form, but in reality, like a lot of it sticks. So like it's very common in Hispanic cultures, and you guys may know this for those who are Hispanic, there's kind of like this like dad rules the house. Like machismo sometimes can be like the other end of it, like the very extreme. but still, like, what dad says goes. Was what the male in the household, like, he has a lot of the say. He's the hard worker. He's the one who brings home the dough. Like, he is the one who wears the pants. Whereas in your culture, it's maybe not always like that.
Yeah, it's not always like that. I mean, you can look at just history, and I don't want to get too much into social justice and stuff, but you can also look at, people in lower income households, and
The war on drugs.
exactly, the war on drugs. They didn't have fathers in the household, so it's more common in my culture to see single mothers, and we saw that a lot. I mean, I grew up in a single parent household, with my mother being, like, it's called the matriarchy.
The matriarch,
Yeah, the matriarch. So I was used to, her being that person that we ran things by, and leading, and like showing us what resiliency looks like, and stuff like
making
that.
the decisions.
Yeah, I wasn't used to seeing that in, like, male form.
Yeah. So in my family, my dad is very much the patriarch of the family. Like, my parents are definitely, oh yeah, Caden. So Caden can kind of understand that a little bit. And you see it in Hispanic cultures too. But it's definitely a thing of, like, when the father is in the household, I mean, what he says goes, like, and without any pushback. And so Jamil had to really learn how to, like, understand and deal with the fact that my dad can be very bossy sometimes, very pushy. He will often trump maybe what other people are wanting, or he'll kind of push things to be his own way as the head of the household. And so, yeah, those are things to just be aware of, to recognize in advance, so that you can help learn how to cope with it and how to deal with it. And honestly, I'm very blessed in Jamil's African-American setup that his mom kind of relinquished her matriarchy to me when we got married. Mm-hmm. So, like, she wasn't still trying to be the head woman in his life after we were married. That was my turn now. But that's not always the case. So if you're going to marry into, African-American Black culture, realize that, hey, like, you might have some pushback between the matriarch of the family and you kind of stepping into that role.
Exactly.
So so just recognize people's background, right? So that's the first one. Talk about it, have conversations. We're going to get a little bit more of how to do that specifically in our third point, which is bridges, right? The second is backlash. Okay, this is going to happen in one way or another, for some people worse than others. Yes. But you're going to have people who don't like the relationship. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be, right? Sometimes it's people in your immediate families, like parents, sisters, uncles, aunts, whatever, who are like, I don't like that you're dating that person. Or, it just could be from society, different things like that, people within your own culture, but who are not immediate family. But backlash is going to happen, right? And Jamil's experience, not necessarily with me, but he's experienced some backlash.
Yeah. I wasn't dating this person or these people, but there were a few girls that, wanted to go to bank with me, or wanted to date me and stuff like that, and would talk to their dads, and they're like, yeah, like, I don't let my daughters date Black guys. Like, that's just not a thing.
And it was accepted, like, it wasn't racist.
Yeah, like, it was just a thing. And it was something that people were confident to say. Like, they weren't afraid to say that, like, yeah, like, my daughter's not going to the bank with a Black guy. And, like, this is in the Adventist church. So, I mean, it happens. It exists. But that's just something that, you have to be prepared for. And if the relationship means enough to you, then again, you can push through it and you can grow. But if you find yourself in a position where your partner, let's say, like, their family feels that kind of way, and then your partner is trying to dismiss those feelings, then that's something that you really need to reevaluate.
Yeah, we're going to give you some tips on how to deal with backlash. But first, let's look at an example in the Bible, because, hey, this is not just us. Like, the Bible has so many tips and resources for how to deal with these things. And it's actually interesting because Moses dealt with backlash at the fact that he dated someone outside of his culture. And so his sister and his brother, Miriam and Aaron, were speaking against Moses because of the fact that he married a Cushite woman who was dark in nature. So she would have been of darker complexion, maybe not as dark as, African Americans in that sense, but she was darker. And you have this account in Numbers 12. And so God actually steps in on behalf of Moses and his marriage. And he brings boils down, right? And I think he strikes them with leprosy. It says in here, until they kind of renounce and say, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, right? Or he kind of steps in and he defends them. And so there are instances where we, yes, should set boundaries to defend maybe someone's dignity, right? So hey, you're not going to talk to so-and-so like that. But when it comes to retaliating, what I see in this is that God fights on our behalf, right? He's going to set the record straight for us on our behalf. And there are some people that we just have to let it go of, like, okay, you are not in my intimate circle. I have no relationship with you. And so I'm going to let God fight that battle.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And as far as dealing with backlash, like, how do you think couples should unite against that?
I would say you have to remember that your goal is to function as a unit. So when it comes to these battles and these things that you're going to face, you have to function as a unit, not as individuals. If you function as individuals, then that's going to just create even more controversy between you guys, because you're going to be defending your side of the family. The other person is going to be defending their side of the family. And then you're just going to find yourself in this position where you're enemies. And you don't want to do that. You want to function as a unit. Like you guys are a couple. So when you're facing these challenges, the goal is to face them together, not separately.
Mm-hmm. And that includes having conversations of like, hey, like, I know that was rough. How did that make you feel?
Yeah.
Is there a way that something I can do to help you feel like you have someone on your side, right? Someone that has your back. And remembering that the Spirit of the Lord brings unity. Like, if you look at Jesus's disciples, I mean, he brought people from all walks of life, some of them even within the same culture, but they might as well have been from completely different worlds, because you have a tax collector and then a zealot. Like, there are even though they're in the same culture, they're completely different sides. One is a traitor to the state, and the other one is so vengeful that they are willing to kill and to defend their own country against what they perceive as enemies. And Jesus is coming and uniting them because they're giving them one purpose, right? And so remembering that when we receive backlash, we can't change the hearts of people. There's nothing that we can say, no argument we can have, no good presentation that we can give to logically convince, hey, this is why you should not feel this way towards this relationship. But what we can do is give it over to God, who is the only one who can change hearts. And by you guys staying strong in your relationship with God, being a light of, wow, like, I used to not like this. I used to not like the fact that you guys were together. I didn't think it was good. I didn't think it was good mixing, but I have seen the way that God has moved in your relationship and my heart has been changed. That is not you going in and trying to manipulate circumstances. Instead, that's allowing the Spirit of the Lord to use you as vessels, as his shining light, and then him going in and doing all the hard work. All right. So don't be surprised when backlash comes your way. In fact, be encouraged knowing that it's opportunities for you to shine God's glory and God's light. And lastly, I have this analogy. I wish we were in person for this. It would have been cool to do. But when it comes to like deep-rooted racism, you're going to find it in every culture. Like, it's not just like white against dark or things like that. Like, I know Cubans who are super racist. And it doesn't, I know Asians, I know Blacks, I know everyone. Why? Because racism is not a culture problem, it's a sin problem. So everyone is going to have an issue with it at some point, unless they're active against it. And so the thing about certain family structures and cultures is that if that is almost like a spider web, where one person's throwing it to the other generation after generation, and then it lands to us and we say, you know what, I don't want this anymore. It's going to take a long time to dismantle that rope. But knowing that it is possible because God is working on our behalf, and you being the first one to make that decision of, you know what, I don't want to live like this. I don't think it's biblical, and I don't think it's morally upright. Making that decision and seeing how everything else tumbles after that. It'll take work and intentionality, but it is possible. Okay, last one. We had background, backlash, and now we're going to bridges. How can we build bridges across cultures? What have you done to build bridges?
So this is kind of an embarrassing story. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna warn you. It may be too much information, but we leave after this, so who cares? I went to what's it called? Chiropractor.
Yep.
And a massage. What are those?
Masseuse.
Yeah, but like massage parlor. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, they're in the same office.
Yeah, same office. Same office. So it was my first day, and I had gotten a little bit of massages beforehand, but not a lot. Before this, I probably got 4 massages in my entire life.
A handful. It's not a lot.
Yeah, like in my entire life, like 4. Vanessa would get massages all the time because she has scoliosis and she's bougie. Yeah, and it was like under her insurance, so she got massaged all the time. I didn't live that life. I was a hard worker. I'm just kidding.
Oh my word.
But yeah, so we were in the office, and the masseuse was telling me, I guess, what was going to happen. And keep in mind, we're in Miami, so basically, we're not in the States, if that makes any sense. So like literally signs say we speak English, just so people can know, like, oh yeah, like they speak English here.
It's a different world.
Yeah, because there's just a lot of Spanish here, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a fact. There's just a lot of Spanish here. So my masseuse didn't feel confident speaking Spanish, and you could tell.
Speaking English.
You can tell through the story. So I walked into the office, and she was telling me, like, yeah, like get undressed, and then the table's over here. And then she was about to close the door, and she opened it back up, and she was like, yeah, no underwear. I was like, okay, like I've only gotten massages like 4 times, but I've never been told not to wear underwear. And I was like, no underwear. And she was like, no underwear. And then like close the door. And I was like, man, like that's really confusing. I mean, I guess this seems like it's not up to code, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not trying to cause controversy. So I did the massage, like how I believe she asked me to do it. Later on, I found out she ended up
super. Yeah, she comes to me and she was like so uncomfortable. She's like, yeah, I don't think he understood what I said, but like tell him next time to wear underwear.
So
like, okay.
So because she wasn't confident in English, this is what I think she meant to say: get undressed, but don't take your underwear off. Like undress yourself, but like not your underwear. But in her mind, again, because you know it's a new language, no underwear was the same as like not underwear. And from me speaking English, I was like, you don't want me to wear any underwear? What kind of stuff is this? Where did you bring me, Vanessa? So that happened, correct? And I was like super nervous to go back because like, man, that's so embarrassing. Like, you know, I never do that. Like I thought she told me, like she said it twice. Like I'm so confused. But then we went back a second time, and I thought I would like practice my Spanish with her since I've been learning. I'm like practicing my Spanish. Like now we talk all the time. I mean, there was a time when she opened up to me about struggles in her family and stuff like that, and like divorce and things like that. And we've been able to get to a place where we're comfortable talking to each other now. But that bridge was built because I was willing to step out of my comfort zone and speak to her in Spanish, even though I wasn't necessarily comfortable in it. Mm-hmm. But before that wasn't a bridge before. And I mean, I could have just taken that awkward situation and just shut down. But there are going to be a lot of situations in our lives we're going to find ourselves in where it could be like awkward, could be really embarrassing, but we can still move on from there in building these bridges.
Yeah, absolutely. You had to make a conscious choice of, I'm going to, even though I'm only on like level 10 of Duolingo, I'm going to take like the 2 sentences that I know in Spanish, and I'm going to use them with my accent and everything. I'm going to think about, even if I make mistakes, I'm putting myself out there because I know that this is going to build a bridge. And like the very fact that he was trying opened up her heart, which is so crazy. And that is what building bridges is all about. It's about taking risks on behalf of your partner and for yourself to say, I am invested in getting to know your culture to the point where I'm willing to do things that like I'm not comfortable doing it's out of my own comfort zone, but I know that it will be beneficial in building a bridge, right? I know that there are cultures where, you know, my dad speaks English, but what if he didn't? Jamil would have to be active, take active steps in saying, I'm going to build a bridge with her dad because I know that her dad is such a key part in her life and in our relationship. So I want him and I to have some sort of conversation. And so building bridges, it's not a passive, it's active. It's taking steps to understand and to step into other people's culture and doing things that maybe we never thought we would have done before. To do this and to do it successfully, I think it's important to have conversations with your partner where it's like a safe space and you kind of set it up to say, hey, like, I want to know these things before I go out there and like maybe offend, right? So it's important for us to acknowledge and to rectify our presuppositions. So there are a lot of presuppositions about Black culture, right? A lot of things that people will say. What are some examples? Like fried chicken is one. Like Kool-Aid.
You mean stereotypes?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There are a number of things. We're tall. We all play basketball.
Y'all have big facial features.
Yeah, big facial features.
Y'all have to sing well.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right? Yeah. So those are a lot of like stereotypes, presuppositions that people have of African American culture. Hispanics are going to have that people on them as well. People would call me beaner, wetback, stuff like that, even though like Puerto Rican and Cuban culture is very different from Central American culture, but it doesn't matter. We're all grouped in one, right? Because we speak Spanish. So it's important for us to realize, hey, like I'm going to have some presuppositions. I'm going to have some stereotypes. And it's not maybe malicious, but they're just there because I grew up with them. Right? People have said it, I've watched it, I've seen it, I've talked about it. We also call these microaggressions, right? And so it's important to recognize these things and talk about them in a safe space and say, hey, like, is this true of your culture? Or what are things that people say about your culture that isn't true? Mm-hmm. How can I learn more about yours? And things that, hey, maybe I thought and I'm completely wrong, or I was kind of right, but now I'm even more right, because you're putting me on the right track. This last year for us, I think we've been together for like 8 years, but this last year specifically, we took a step in really understanding each other's backgrounds as far as it comes as being a Black man in America, right? Jamil would make fun of me because I was like, yeah, if we were in the 1950s, like I would still love you, Jamil. Don't worry about it. And he was like, Vanessa, you're also a minority. Like, what do you think that white people were going to think of you? Like, don't forget that it's not just Blacks. It was hilarious. Anyway, so obviously my background with like police, social justice, stuff like that, it wasn't in the same light. I saw Hispanics suffer at the hand of immigration a lot. So that was kind of my viewpoint. But as far as like in a citizen of America, like I loved the police. I thought that they were like really, I was like, man, my dream.
Yeah, your dream.
Yeah, my dream is to ride in the back of a police car.
Yeah, that was her dream and my nightmare.
Yeah.
That was.
And so this last year, he and I had to sit down and have intentional conversations of like, what is it like being a Black man in America? What did your parents teach you? Like, how is your worldview different? How do you view certain things? Because in our relationship, things would pop up that like I wouldn't understand, but I never asked about. And that was my fault. Like we would walk in neighborhoods for colporteuring or like Bible work. And we would knock on doors, whatever. We were in one and Jamil saw a police car. He ran to the car and took off his jacket, put it in the thing. And I was like, why'd you do that? And he was like, there's a police right there. And I was like, so? Obviously, we know the shooting were hands in pockets, Skittles in the hands. Like, there you go. Like the person's dead because they're wearing a jacket. Other things like, I don't want to knock on that door because the police officer's there. There's just stereotypes and stuff that I didn't understand, but I never thought to ask. And this last year, we had to move into a place of uncomfortable conversations where I was just sitting and being educated about, hey, like your experience is very different from mine. How do I help you feel comfortable in public spaces? Because maybe I need to tone down. I can't go screaming, yelling out the window because it's going to draw attention to us. And you're a Black man in America. How does that make you feel? you know? So these are important conversations to have with your partner of like, hey, like what is your experience like living in America? How have you experienced racism? And how can I help make sure that those things don't come to you unnecessarily, right? Where I'm not attracting um, things to you that don't need to be there. And during these things, Jamil is a great listener. What tips do you have about listening?
Yeah, I would say rather than listening to respond, just listen to understand. Um, Listen to learn more about the other person. Because it can be easy for us when someone's talking to be thinking about what we're going to say next already. Like, oh, well, like, I already know what I'm going to say next. And then thinking about what we're going to say next, we just completely miss what they're saying. So when it comes to these like really uncomfortable conversations that will come up, they're inevitable. They're going to come up. It's important to listen to understand, listen to learn, and just be humble. Realize that you don't know it all.
Yeah.
You don't know everything. There are going to be things that you're going to continue to learn throughout the years of you guys being together. Like, I still don't know everything about Vanessa. She still doesn't know everything about me per se. We're still going to learn more things about each other as we grow, and the more time we spend together. We're going to still continue to learn more about our cultures. Culture is something that is not a one and done thing where, you have one class and then now you're a master in like knowing Latin culture. That's not a thing.
Right. Exactly. So initiating conversations it doesn't always just happen by happenstance. You just roll into it and you're like, oh, hey, we're here. Like, it's like, hey, let's go on a date. And on this date, we're going to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So we're already thinking about it. We're already setting this bar of like, I really want to know, I want to understand your background. I want to build bridges from my experience to your experience, not trying to fix your experience or rationalize your experience, but just listen to your experience. I'm not here to tell you, hey, like you shouldn't have felt that way about that person. Like, oh, you're so sensitive. Like they weren't looking at you because they were racist. They were just looking at you because whatever, or because, they were aggressive towards you. I'm not here to rationalize your experience. I'm just here to listen to what's going on. So our last thing before we take some questions for you guys is to continue your education. Do some research. Research can look like conversations. It also looks like reading books, watching some documentaries, educating yourself. There's information for all sorts, right? For Hispanics and for Asian cultures and for a lot of stuff for African American. So like there's books you can read, there's movies you can watch, there's documentaries you can watch, podcasts you can listen to. There's a bunch of resources out there to get yourself educated on the plight of the other person, right? And their culture and their background. So thank you guys. We hope this was a blessing. We would love to take some questions now with the last 10 minutes that we have. Any questions that you guys have that maybe we didn't cover today?